Okay, so we're standing here in the monument. It was erected by the Japanese during World War II in 1944 to the dead who built the death railway. We've already begun to discover that Kanchanaburi is a very complicated memoryscape. But I think after our experience in the museum, the JEATH Museum, or claiming to be the original museum next door, we've almost moved on from complexity to a degree of confusion. So what were your impressions of where we've been and where we are now?
So we've just entered the museum, and as the pictures show, there's a train in the entranceway which is made in England, which was used during the railways, the operation of the railway, and then there is a series of national flags behind it. So it's very much an international melange of histories that are being brought together, and that gets carried right through the museum, of material artifacts that are from the Allied forces, from obviously artifacts that were used by Thai, everyday artifacts such as typewriters, clocks, watches, sewing machines, so on and so forth, and then also all the paraphernalia of war as well, which obviously were, I imagine, from this town, and then that brings us into other rooms around the photographs and the actual representation of what happened here around the bridge, around the railway line, and the atrocities that happened in that. So what were your responses to that in terms of how those things were brought together?
A bit confusing, like Mark said. And Mark just asked me about the architecture, about the its temples, and it has some sort of decoration is related
Would you
to
say that's Buddhist?
Buddhism, and Thai, kind of Thai architecture.
So typical.
But the way they put it together, it's a bit confusing. They have also like a ghost lady.
Right.
Okay, under the ground floor, you see. You asked me about the lady sitting on the fish. So she's supposed to be the spirit of old trees.
So did you see that there was a woman inside a boat?
I did
with
see
a diorama.
I didn't realise that. So there's also the dioramas. There's also the casket with remains of 142 war dead. 106, sorry.
Right.
And also the explanation elsewhere that this has spiritual significance, that the spirits are protecting people here, and that there were miraculous responses, and they're very clear about that, publicly, and in Japanese translation and in English translation.
In Thai too.
In Thai.
But I don't feel that much. Because it's maybe the way they do it, it feels like kind of the decoration is some sort of, it's not really spiritual. It's like kind of exaggerating to have the artifacts and have the flowers, fake flowers, and it doesn't have a sense of, like seriousness or respect.
So it's clearly a structure that I'd imagine has been built over time, because there were a number of indoor-outdoor spaces. You walked underground as you entered, and then there wasn't obviously a coherent original plan of how this thing, I think it's grown over time.
It's an amazing example of old-fashioned collecting.
So that's what it is.
The original kind of curatorial
of everything from that period, from dentist chairs to barber's chairs to cars to
old money.
Lots of old money.
Well, the dentist chairs were, as I said, the bicycles were imported from Japan. A lot of Japanese in Southeast Asia were dentists or barbers. None of that would be made clear because there's no captioning. But it's not just, it says it's a war museum, it's also a jewellery museum.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And it's a nationalist museum.
That's right,
and
the Thai heroes.
The only thing I don't remember seeing was jewellery, but I think that was in the top gallery. I think we didn't get to. But
and there's the sort of Buddhist didactics about temperance. And there's the whole section which has all the leaders of war through the centuries. Which has the casket of the war dead, which is the kind of peace.
There's bas-reliefs of Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, so on and so forth. Was Napoleon there? I didn't see it.
Napoleon was there, a whole lot. Opium Wars were there. And all of this, with this other confusion we're having, because we read some of the academic literature, is this the original JEATH museum? Japanese, what was it again? Japanese, English, Australian,
Dutch,
Thai, Holland,
Dutch,
museum. Or is that further elsewhere? And they claim this is the original.
They claim. I talked to the gentleman in front, and he said that is original one. There's two more museums.
There's 3 in total.
That's what he said, and the 2 is like following him, and he's original one.
So we've understood from what we've read, the original one opens in '77, set up by an abbot, and that was, and you were thinking about that in the ways in which that was also to put the ghosts and the spirits to rest in the town.
For memorial.
But not what coming across there in any way at all. So the sense of whether that is original, and we're going to move on to that after lunch. So whether that is the case, I think we'll learn more.
Right.
And right next to it is this very complicated and complex monument as well, which was built by the Japanese during World War II. Sits right next to the museum. But as far as I gather, using POW slave labour, forced labour. Yeah. So it was a very contentious site, but has now become a site of reconciliation tours, annual ceremonies, including the Japanese who come here as an act of expiation.
So in each corner, there's. Go on, you.
Well, in each corner, yeah. If you move around, there's the Chinese.
There's plaques in each corner.
The Vietnamese over there, Thai, Malay, and Tamil, and hardly anything written in English. So it's always it has a kind of certain Pan-Asian aspect to it, which we've said elsewhere in the site. If you're coming from to the museums and the sites that have been built through the Australian influence here, is very, very Eurocentric. Here we have sort of this Pan-Asian moment.
But also when you put the two together, that museum and this site, what is really clear is this landscape, this city, and particularly the what's being presented to the tourism audience, evades and eludes any kind of transnational or national analysis. So any academic analysis that tries to compartmentalize this down to being just about is it reconciliation, so that museum just explodes all of that. I think it just greatly complicates what might be going on, and I think any visit to that.
It's a babel of memories and appropriated memories and messages. And I really struggle to see there a shared intercultural dialogue about this space. In fact, if there is, I think they're talking past.
Right. And that's the connoisseur's collector. I mean, it's an eclectic mix of items, artifacts, and distinctions aren't made.